So this behemoth is the 13-inch M4 iPad Pro from Apple's most pro lineup of tablets in space black. And this is my review. Hey, what's good? Prash here with my take on Apple's 13-inch M4 iPad Pro. And you already know, we're gonna get straight into it with the design. Alright, so for some reason, Apple decided to put the new iPad on the Jenny Craig diet and slim it down even further. Why? I really don't know. I guess 0 really is a size after all. The result here, however, is a trimmed down iPad that is lighter than the older Air models. And I don't exactly know how I feel about this. I mean, it still has the classic boxy Apple design, which is great. But I think personally, I would have appreciated having a little more to hold on to, especially with this 13-inch behemoth of a tablet. Still, I do appreciate the lightness here, and while it is pretty sturdy, it's not invulnerable to bending, as proven by Jerry-Rig Everything. So best to use a case here as added protection and to keep the fingerprints at bay, especially on the space black version. Now out the back, they did actually remove the ultra-wide angled sensor, a decision that did fly under the radar here. It wasn't really mentioned from Apple in their advertising, but that's just Apple being sneaky. Speaking of cameras, the primary Face ID and selfie cam has now been moved over to the center of the longer and more convenient side of the iPad, making it much easier ergonomically to make those longer FaceTime calls. Now, the camera system front and back are pretty decent. Your main camera system is a single 12 megapixel f1.8 wide sensor. In addition, you also get a TOF 3D LiDAR scanner, which does aid with AR as well. Out the front, you get a single 12 megapixel f2.4 ultra wide selfie cam with face detection, HDR, and the resolution here for this webcam is 1080p, which is nice, and is HDR enabled. The photos produced here are decent and will definitely work for social media shots, although I couldn't imagine anyone running around with this thing to take photos out and about. You can also record 4K footage at 60 frames, stabilized, which is also nice to have. Now let's talk about performance. Alright, so this particular model has Apple's M4 chip, and the configuration here for the CPU is the 9-core model with 3 performance cores and 6 efficiency cores, and this particular model has 256 gigs of storage. It also features 8 gigs of RAM. And right off the bat, it's beyond overkill here. It absolutely murdered every task I threw at it, whether you're playing higher end games, watching media, browsing the web, going through a script, writing some emails. Multitasking here is fluid, the performance here is just buttery smooth, and with Apple's beautifully optimized OS, you can pretty much guarantee it's gonna stay that way for years to come. Media consumption in gaming is only enhanced further by this stunning tandem OLED screen. This is a new term that Apple cooked up, and it just means that there were multiple panels used in the construction of this screen. The result here are vivid blacks and vibrant colors. The 120Hz refresh rate also adds to the buttery smooth feel of this device. Great job here, Apple. Now the battery life here is solid, about 8 to 10 hours depending on what I'm doing. The M4 chip is definitely flexing its efficiency here. The battery life is, from what I can tell, slightly better than previous gen iPad Pros that had larger physical batteries. And that got me thinking, what if Apple just kept the thickness the same and increased the battery capacity, and in turn improved the battery life even further? I mean, this could be a real game changer here, but I guess we'll have to wait for the next gen iPad for that. Speaking of, in the box you get a 20-watt charger, despite this iPad supporting more than 30 watts of charging. So Apple really could have changed it up here, especially since you'd be paying for around 1600 USD and onwards for these new iPads. Now do me a favor and remember that number, because it'll, well, come back and haunt us in a minute. Now the speaker quality here is interesting. Apple decided to go for smaller circular speakers, and with a thinner frame, there is actually less sound chamber volume for it to work with. And this results in good but not great speaker quality. Here is a sample. I honestly feel like the sound quality on my 2021 M1 iPad Pro is better. Another thing to note here is the fact that there is no support for older gen Apple Pencils. So if you thought you could get away with selling an organ to buy this thing, well, be prepared to sell a few more pints of blood as well. Alright, so what are my final thoughts on Apple's 13-inch M4 iPad Pro? And well, let's review. It's light, it's devastatingly powerful, the screen is just fantastic, the battery life is decent, you've got a camera system with a decent webcam as well. It's honestly Apple's most advanced iPad yet. So the answer is, well, pretty obvious, isn't it? And that is a big resounding no. Truth is, if I had to go and buy a larger screen iPad right now, then I would genuinely just go for the 12.9-inch M1 iPad Pro. And the reason for this is that while I was actually testing out the M4 iPad Pro, I was also using my 2021 M1 iPad Pro here, which I was using as a reference point to just see how far the M4 iPad had come. And in all honesty, it hasn't really made that many leaps and bounds since. Especially not enough to justify the price tag of around $1,600 USD for the base spec model and around $2,200 USD for the top spec model with the matte screen as well. And this amount goes even further up if you were to pick up the Magic Keyboard and the Apple Pencil Pro. Now keeping in mind, out here in NZ, I could actually go out and buy a brand new 12.9-inch M1 iPad Pro for around $1,200 USD. So I could actually save that $400 USD and pick up some accessories as well, like the older Apple Pencil and a case and a few other things. I remember when the M1 iPad Pro came out, it was overkill back then, and still to this day it remains an incredible device. Great screen, performance, battery, and better speakers. I went back to using my M1 iPad Pro after reviewing the M4 iPad, and I genuinely didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. Truly, the issue here is that the iPad OS really limits the capabilities of this M4 chip, which is very powerful, but just limited in its functionality. I mean, all this power, and what am I going to do with it? Watch Fallout on Amazon Prime? Maybe play some GTA San Andreas? Maybe catch up on a few shows on Netflix? Write a couple emails? Watch some YouTube? At the end of the day, it's still just an iPad. And at this price point, you're entering MacBook territory. Specifically, M2 MacBook Air territory. Which is actually interesting here because the 13-inch M2 MacBook Air with 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of storage is actually cheaper than this new base model M4 iPad Pro. And so I feel that there are three options here. Firstly, if you have the disposable income and you want the latest and greatest iPad experience from Apple, and you're willing to pay the premium for it, as well as the newer accessories that you'll have to purchase to use with this iPad, then by all means, go for the M4 iPad Pro. It is a great device and offers you an excellent overall experience. Now, option number two, if you are looking for a larger screen Pro iPad to do, well, iPad-ish things, but you are price conscious, then I would highly recommend picking up the 12.9-inch M1 iPad Pro, as it truly is a fantastic device. Now the third option here is that if you are looking for a powerful iPad and you want that Apple experience, but you think you might also want a device to do more productive work, then I'd highly recommend looking into the M2 MacBook Air, because while the screen may not be as good as the iPad, you will, however, be able to fully make use of the M2 chip's capabilities purely because of the macOS software. Alright, so this has been it for my review on Apple's 13-inch M4 iPad Pro. Like, subscribe, do all of that good stuff. Comment down below what you actually think of Apple's newest iPad. But yeah, for now, it looks like we're out of time. So I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.